Happy Sunday afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us. We're going to do our next roundtable for our Fire on the Rising Sun build. For those that may not be familiar with it, I'll give you a very quick rundown. So this is a build that's special to me. It's a 1/35th using the Border Models kit of the Akagi, which is the flight deck and island and all that sort of stuff. But crazily enough, I've added 2 extra layers to it of 2 hangers, and we're going to depict the moment of the Battle of Midway when the bomb pierces through the flight deck and explodes. Also, this signifies a lot to do with my recovery from my heart attack, etc., of which it's all linked in many different ways. So today, let's get the guys in and we'll set the scene and get going. So obviously we've got the wonderful Malcolm.
Oh, hi. Hello. Good afternoon.
You're right.
Yeah, good. Good. You hear me all right?
What?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, well, fine. I'm looking forward to this one.
You're going to keep us under control and ask the questions and set the scenes and all that sort of stuff?
Yes, I will passively, aggressively make sure that everybody is in line and doesn't talk too much.
Okie dokie. And for those of you that are watching, if you've got a question, pop a question in, as it says scrolling underneath there. Put a question mark at the beginning, but then throw your question in and ask us anything you like whatsoever. And we better get the guys that know what they're doing in, better we, I suppose. Like that, indeed, Malcolm. So, hi, Martin. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Excellent.
Good afternoon from Utah. Oh no, sorry. Good morning. I'm the other way around now. It's morning in Utah. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, morning in Utah and afternoon in the UK. And then we've got someone else that's just dropped out of the studio.
Perfect timing.
Great timing. So Bill will be with us shortly, hopefully. Yeah, I literally got to go and press on it. I didn't kick him out. Honestly, didn't. Wasn't
maybe
me.
It's maybe he's playing a joke on you.
Maybe.
So if you start your questions with the question mark at the beginning, does it highlight it for you differently? Is that why you want us to do that?
No, it's just so I can see that
okay.
It's a question.
Okay.
Because obviously
on Streamyard you can show it, can't you, on screen, the questions? But I wondered if that was the little kind of marker to say put them on screen.
No, if there is a question mark in the statement or what's written in the comment, then it highlights in the corner as a question mark.
Oh, okay.
So, I don't think it automatically throws it up on the screen, not that I'm aware of, but I don't know.
Gotcha.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly just send Bill a message just to make sure he's okay.
Yeah. While you do that, shall I start off, do you think?
Yeah.
So the title of this roundtable is Scars of Battle. So that could mean, obviously, the scars of a huge, massive bomb going through the middle of a carrier, but it also could mean the scars of someone having a triple heart bypass as well, you know. And like this build has been, like we've been discussing, there's a lot of crossover between what James has had to go through in terms of recovery and the mental scarring, shall we say, and the physical scarring of such a thing, and obviously what happened to the Akagi in history as well. And when we're talking about weathering, I guess we are talking about, I mean, yeah, James looks quite weathered as well. So that's a thing, but also like the literal weathering of something as well, not just the weathering of years and years, but also the abrasion of rain and sea and everything else on the side of a boat. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you, James, to start off with, but was that about the age of the Akagi, and whether you have researched how long it was at sea before it got hit, and if it had been at sea for years, or if it had only just sailed out. And do you know what level of rust was on there? And welcome back, Bill.
Thanks. Sorry about that. My computer just blanked.
No, that's okay. No problem. You okay? Bill, you okay?
Yeah. Oh, doing fine. Thanks.
Cool. In answer to your question, so the Akagi was built as a battleship originally, and then 1934, I think it was, or around there. There was an agreement between the United States and Japan, and they couldn't have so many capital ships because they had quite a lot. So they redesigned them before it actually was let loose, so to speak. So they decided to go with an aircraft carrier. And it's one of the reasons why the Japanese had a high abundance of aircraft carriers, was because they had these capital ships that they couldn't allow them to be capital ships because of the documents in which they'd signed and agreements and stuff.
Okay.
The Akagi was actually a two flight deck aircraft carrier originally, with the main bridge on the second flight deck in the middle, so I could see where it was going, but also could see aircraft taking, etc. So if you can try and reimagine that, that's quite a bizarre looking beast, because you've basically got a flight deck on top and a flight deck underneath it. And the idea was that the second flight deck would launch and the top flight deck would recover, because obviously trying to recover into underneath would probably be almost impossible. But anyway, that was the idea and plan. However, she underwent a refit and was changed into the way she was during the Battle of Midway, and that was done in just before, about a year or so before Pearl Harbor. So it went through a lot of changes and was quite modern in its overall, basically, that it had. So the other thing about it was that in between Pearl Harbor and Midway, it also had another upgrade, a slight upgrade, as far as I could figure out. So she'd been at sea, but she was also, as all of the ships of the Navy were seen to be, the taxi service for the Army. And this is one of the biggest problems with the Japanese at that time, was that services really didn't get on at all. So the Army hated the Navy and vice versa. And there was a constant battle between them as to who was in charge of everything, basically.
Right.
Because although there was the Emperor, obviously, he was still seen as a figurehead rather than someone that had control. So the Army were pretty much in control. The Navy fought against them. They come up with these wondrous plans, of which initially they were like, yeah, that's great, we'll do that because that's really going to work. And then the Army would come along and go, well, that's all very well and good, but we need la 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 la. So even with the Pearl Harbor, obviously part of the Pearl Harbor strike was that they had invasion forces out already to start seizing land as soon as that happened. So that then also meant that they had to restrict the amount of assets that were used for that attack, which there was a little bit less than what they had actually planned for.
So just in terms of what it would look like weathering wise, then all those factors would have contributed somewhat to it looking a bit tired, do you think?
Well, certainly around the period in which we're talking about Pearl Harbor and Midway, there were some very violent and nasty storms in the area. Certainly at Midway itself, to the lead up to Midway. So it certainly would have taken a good battering, and it would have been turned around really quickly each time it got into the yard, because obviously it was constantly needed, even though they had numerous amounts of aircraft carriers, they still were constantly in use and constantly being pushed out to do operations and stuff. So, and that's one of the reasons why Midway was so vital, was that by knocking out as much as they could at that point, pretty much disabled the rest of the fleet.
So it's going to be quite weathered then, in other words. It's not
Yeah.
going to be pristine. It's going to have rust. It's going to have streaks. It's going to have missing paint, that kind of stuff, I assume.
Yeah. There's definitely going to be some of that, without a doubt.
Good.
And it's certainly going to show the weathering of weather.
Yes. So let's deal with the weathering side first before we talk about the putting battle damage on. We'll split it up, shall we, if we can? So weathering wise, we're talking rust streaks, aren't we? Which what we all love doing because it's fun. So let's go to our expert panel down there and discuss that. So Bill,
Yes.
you are a man who likes his weathering and his dioramas. So if you were faced with this enormous project to do and you had decided that you were going to be weathering this massive Akagi, how would you approach it? Well, where would you start?
Well, I think that for me, the reworking is very interesting. You know, the rebuilding, the refurbishing, you know, the constant maintenance and stuff like that. So maybe things that haven't been finished. I don't know. I'm trying to kind of get that in my mind where we've welded a bulkhead, we've done a repair, we've added struts for the upper deck, the lift to place that upper deck over the underdeck. I don't know, but it seems like it would be nice to have something that looked like it was reworked, or it looked like it had been under repair. I don't think cobbled together, but more like if there was a weld done, it wasn't painted, or, you know, this weld is all done around this certain area, but it's not been painted. It hasn't been fully recovered. You know, they hadn't put in paint over it. And then the other thing I've always loved, and I mean, you see it on cars and you see it on old equipment, is the bubbling up of the paint under where there's rust and corrosion and stuff like that. And soldiers, navies, military, they'll just paint right over it. So you'll see a little bit of that at the base. And so I kind of was thinking at the base of, you know, the stack that you were showing us before we started today, at the base of that, maybe have some deformation. Is that a word?
Yeah.
But you know, where the rust is there and it's just been painted over, not haphazard, but you can definitely tell that there's something under it. And it's a tiny detail. I mean, it really should be, because if it's too much, it's not going to look right. But it's one of those tiny details when your eye is let in and you really start to focus. I'm hoping you would pick that up. You know, that would be my hope. But little things like that everywhere. A tool left out, a welding set next to a weld where there's no one there. You know, the welding has been interrupted for whatever reason. And I love those little beautiful welding sets that you can find for kits. And it's the dual tanks so that everybody understands what it is really right away. So you've got a welding set up there, but it's not painted, it's not finished, that kind of thing.
I like that idea. Yeah. So you'd have texture underneath, basically. So you don't have to worry too much about your smooth finish.
Absolutely
so
not.
Yeah.
Show that wear. But not the initial wear, the wear that's been repaired. I really like that.
And I guess that could come into James's modern state of being repaired as well, I guess, because I know these things were done before it was hit, obviously, but there could be something in that. I don't know what you think about that, James.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, and I think there's one of the things in which I was quite conscious of was in the research that I'd done, was I understood that obviously Japan was going through a period where they had an awful lot of resource in which they were trying to, or infrastructure in which they were trying to make world warships, battleships, etc., etc. But one of the biggest problems with Japan was that the sheer lack of raw materials. So there would be things where, where it might be easier to do a weld on a formation of a wall or whatever, but maybe they didn't have all the right materials, so it was a case of rivet it together because it's quicker and easier and costs less, or less materials. I don't know. I don't know which is better, if I'm honest, in that respect. But I would guess that there would be some of that as well. So there's going to be a bit of a mix match in the way in which. What I'm hoping to achieve is there'll be moments you can spot where that may have been when it was first done with its 2 flight decks, and then the main bulkhead wall, for example, would be pretty as it is, and then there might be something on there that's slightly done differently to achieve the same thing, but instead of it being a weld, it's rivets or something like that. So that gives the ability for me to try and make a small distinction. It may not be picked up by the viewer, but it'd be something in which I can add in.
Yeah. What about you, Martin? How would you approach this epic weathering adventure?
I think one of the things is trying to sell the realism, and it's, as Bill was saying, it's the small details that do that, the little things that people will notice, and you're kind of relying on the viewer's experience. What would they recognize? What would they know? Now, we've all seen rusty cars, so we know what rust looks like. We've seen repairs of stuff. We know what that looks like. Any dirt, where dirt might collect. It's a very dirty, grubby area. Aircraft hangar inside an aircraft carrier. It's going to be. I know the Japanese were very, very into keeping things clean and neat and tidy, but it's going to look like a place that's been worked in and lived in. And so just little subtle, almost invisible touches that maybe not everyone will pick up, but some people will. And just to make it seem believable. I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
And
so the little details, huh?
And saying, showing previous repairs and stuff, that's like layering a story. That's using your environment to tell the story, that the ship has been at sea a while, it has been repaired, things have been changed, layers of stuff have gone on, rather than replacing with just like, let's just tack this piece on and weld it on. Just seeing just little changes that are just out of the ordinary, but just enough to notice, just subtle stuff.
Yeah, so it might be quite good that you've been scratch building it. I know that before we went live, you were talking about the stairs, and you were saying that the stairs weren't quite straight. All 3 of us didn't notice that,
No.
but you did. But that would be okay, because if those stairs were built in haste, they might not be perfectly straight. I mean, I'm just guessing.
Yeah, yes. I mean, that I'm going a bit mad in the island at the moment. Where I'm adding detail where I don't really need to, but I'm doing it for a reason. It's given me the ability to practice some of the techniques I'm going to use in the lower area. But also one of the other things as well is, because of what I've done, is I've now opened up the ability to add a few extra bits inside that island, which will need to be lit. Which I said, going back all those episodes ago, I'm not going to use lights at all. I'm going to be using some lights.
Well, yeah, I think lights is. I think we talked about. Well, some people said you need to have lights because of how dark it will be, and some people said don't use lights at all. So, yeah.
Well, but this is the thing: is that it's the model itself. The border models have allowed for some LEDs to be in the bridge area, so that can be lit up, and it's right that it should be, because it's a pivotal place in the island, so it should be able to tell a story in itself, or allowed to tell that story. But I've opened doors up that weren't necessarily opened, so I've had to add a little bit of detail inside to so it's not just looking into a vast island. So there's a wall that you open, you look in the door, you can see a wall. You got another one that's got a corridor that you should be able to look down. You've got one of the doors opens up in the bridge, so you can look inside the bridge. And one fact that I found out, which was I felt was really interesting, is that Border Model's done this in 1/35th, but they've also done it in 1/72nd. And I don't understand why, but the 1/72nd version bridge has an awful lot more detail in it than the 1/35th.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So, which is fine, because it just so happens I've printed the instructions for that 1/72nd, and it's now given me a layout of dials and pipework and all sorts of stuff I wouldn't have had otherwise.
I wonder if they're assuming that being a larger scale, that you would want to and possibly need to add your own detail, but on 1/72nd it's so small that they don't assume people have that ability. I don't know whether that's the case.
I think that's quite possible, definitely. But it is, I find it quite strange that they have gone to an awful lot of detail, and even to the point where you would think, like for example, on the bridge, you got the windows of the bridge, and then you've got like a metal plate across the top, and there's dials on the metal plate, right? But they're things you glue in place. They're not part of the molded thing, so it's not a case of they've made a mold and you've got the detail because it's part of that mold. It's extra parts that you glue in. Interesting. But as it happens, the detail is not 100% correct either. So maybe that's part of it too. Because the problem with the Akagi and a lot of the capital ships of the Japanese Navy is there is very little information on them. We know where they are in the sea at a given time, or where they are now.
No colour photographs of them.
No, there's no pictures, and the pictures you can get now of them where they're in the resting place doesn't really help the detail side of stuff, because they're quite badly corroded and etc. So yeah, it's interesting, and I'm glad, actually, if I'm honest, I'm glad they've not put that detail in. For me personally, because I enjoy doing the scratch building bit. I'm not sure my friends that got 3D printers are very impressed, because they're now all printing stuff for me.
Yes. Well, that's one way to get rid of friends, isn't it? What about other battleships? I don't want to go into the research too much, but have you looked at other ships at the time that have not been sent to the bottom of the sea? And then using that as a reference.
Yeah. So what I've done is I've made an awful lot of assumptions with the Akagi. In that, there was one of the joys, actually. It wasn't done on purpose, but it's one of the joys. It's how I model. I don't really like to get a picture and go, that is a representation of that picture, because even with an aircraft right now, I can go and look at Sally B, let's say a B-17 in the UK. Beautiful aircraft, lovely, really, really well restored.
Yeah,
but it's not 100% correct as it would have flown in the war. Correct. because things have changed, things have had to be modernized, or colors have been added to signify certain things and all that sort of stuff. So, and the same with HMS Belfast, a very famous battleship of the UK fleet. It's in the Thames right now, but you go and look at it, and it is not in the configuration it was in 1940s. It's totally changed in many ways, not in all, but in many. So the research I've managed to find are a few pictures of Japanese bridges, for example, be them cruisers or battleships or whatever, and I've taken elements of it, but I've also then looked at the Yorktown, for example, because they were quite advanced in their design for their aircraft carriers. It's they were the first to put the island on the side that is on all aircraft carriers, and the way that's all built, etc., has pretty much not changed since then as such. So reflecting on the Yorktown and other aircraft carriers from the US has given me some reference. So it's a bit of that, a bit of this, and a bit of I'll stick that there because it looks good.
One of the things we talked about last time was it doesn't really matter. We're going for, I say you are not going for absolute realism because you want to tell a story, as well. So when I know that Martin, you picked on telling a story, was quite important about what you're trying to do with the modeling. So Bill, when you're weathering something, what details, because you mentioned the details, what parts of the details would you put in as to make the story sell it? You said like little things that you have, but what things specifically other than painted over rust, like you said?
I think that I can't remember if I know I've suggested this before, but I can't remember if I've suggested it in our meetings. I've always liked the idea of a pile of aircraft parts, a pile of things that have been removed from the aircraft as these new things are being put on to be replaced. Mm-hmm. And so having something against the bulkhead kind of a way where you've got literally parts of whatever you're repairing, could be old wheels, could be panels, could be ailerons, whatever, are all just kind of piled over there against the side. I think that shows a frenetic need to get these aircraft back up in the air, and these old parts just get them out of the way. So that's one thing that I've always had in my mind in this build, because of the nature of what they're doing, repairing and getting aircraft back in the air, but also rearming. The other thing that has really been an issue for me personally is signage. Placing proper signage in kanji or katakana. I don't know what they used on board, the ship, mm-hmm. but putting things there that look proper. Like if I have an area for those old parts, you might have, old parts or danger, over fuel or something like that. And those labels, those signs, they're everywhere in the military. And I don't care what military you're from. All military is going to have signage to tell you everything to do. In this case, they would all have to be in kanji or katakana, but which one I don't know. And trying to find those, people that could make you, water slides or something like that for that. I don't know what all is included in the kit, but I would try to focus maybe on more of that, because I always think that the stuff that comes with a kit is pertinent and is specific to the kit, but it's not necessarily pertinent or specific to the scene. And we're always trying to create a scene with a diorama. So I think these other signs, these other labels, these things that maybe even somebody painted on a wall is important to give the feel of this is a Japanese ship. It's just all Japanese. I think that would be a nice element to add, just that little extra bit of detail.
Yeah. What about you, Martin? You said selling details that the viewer will recognize. Is that what you kind of the sort of thing you mean, like signs and things?
Yeah, just the way I see it, it's like two different arms of the same thing. There's technical accuracy and there's artistic accuracy. You want stuff to be correct, like Bill was saying, having signs, and that's a common thing. You would see lots of signs around, but also artistic stuff that may not be absolutely spot on, but it's something that people will recognize, and stuff that makes it seem everyday. This is a work environment. People are working here all day, every day, trying to keep planes in the air. They're tools, rags, those like nowadays we have those plastic bins with bits and pieces in them, stuff like that, just sitting around. It just gives it a level of believability, and that artistic interpretation, it has to be a mix. And usually I go for like 60-70% technical accuracy and the rest artistic, just to make sure that it's not sterile by being absolutely 100% correct without looking lived in and worked in. It's getting that, to me, it's getting that point across, just to get the viewer to feel, yeah, I can believe this. This looks logical. I can see this was a work environment. People are working here. I've got evidence all around me. And then the person who's more of the expert, because if you think about it, your audience is really two lots of people. You've got just the casual viewer who thinks, oh, this is nice. And then you've got the person who's more of the expert, if you like, who has more knowledge of the Pacific War, Japanese ships, and is like, ooh, they have
rivet counters.
Well, yeah, which there's nothing wrong with, but just to satisfy both audiences. But I think because of the situation, because it's such a well-known battle and well-known ship, I think the balance has to be slightly more in favor of technical accuracy, and then you can make it up with your artistic interpretation for impact. You want to direct your viewer's eye as well, whether you're directing it towards for the more technically minded, towards stuff that is absolutely correct, or to the casual viewer, stuff that they would recognize, stuff just lying around, to make it look more realistic.
Yeah, so there has to be a balance, doesn't there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Do you want to go look at the question in there from Joe?
Yeah, there's it's a statement, not a question. But Joe says the movie Tora Tora and the old Midway can help you give ideas for the bridge to help with the illusion. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The more modern Midway film is something that I've looked at a few times, and I got a little bit panicked just recently because in that particular movie, the Admiral is on the bridge of the Akagi, and where I've shown, or where I will be showing, a back wall of the bridge, that's actually opens up into a room behind the bridge, which is where the map table is and all that sort of stuff. And I did consider whether I should open that up and go that route, and then I thought, well, no, I'll stick to where I am with the kit as it is, because it's quite fundamental to its structure, that wall, and it's not something that everyone's going to see anyway, so wouldn't be an awful lot of point of doing it. It's extra, yeah, it'd be fun to do, don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure it's necessary. So yeah, again, the problem with cinema, especially cinema, is they're not going to be overly worried about accuracy of a particular element, i.e. a bridge or whatever. There'll be things within it that won't be right, and their references will be the struggles just as much as I have with trying to find reference. So, but the good thing from that is after I got over the initial panic, I thought to myself, actually, no, that says everything I need to know, is that's been used as artistic license because it was easier to explain the story in that moment, because they're on the bridge and you've got three lieutenants standing around a map table going, we've given the wrong advice, oops. And now they're all looking very happy. But I don't need
to evoke emotion, isn't it? It's trying to tell a story and not have the technical side of exactly what the layout was in the way of the storytelling. And,
I think that the physical layout kind of dictates the foundation of the story, but your artistic choices are what amplifies the drama.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I took out of those scenes was it's the stupid stuff. I'm not really looking at the scene or the actors. I'm looking at the stuff behind them. What's on the wall? What dials are there? How many dials are there? They're on the bridge. Why would they have so many dials over there? What would they signify? So that made me look into that sort of thing a little bit more. So those subtle details that we were talking about and reflecting to earlier were the sort of things I can take from the film, definitely. And those sort of elements would certainly help. And we spoke to someone in one of our round tables about how to create drama, etc., and cinematography and all that sort of thing. And those are the sort of elements in which you can take from the film, in which you can sprinkle like magic dust effectively through the build.
Those little details and things. We also talked about like having things that were front and center, the main points that you want to tell in the story, and then have all the bits at the back that are the, you know, the magic dust, if you like, that makes it realistic.
So one of the things in which we touched upon, and I'll remind the audience because they may not have seen it, but so the 3 levels were all telling a story combined, but they're also telling a story of different journeys from my personal experience, etc. And that's the beauty of this project. It's a historical nod, a nod to the historical, but also a nod to the physical elements I've gone through the heart operation, etc., etc. So just to remind and recap, that the top deck was going to show elements within that top deck would show the journey for my family, my wife, etc., of that experience. The main piece, if you like, in the middle was going to be my journey, the shock, the elements, and operation la la la, and then underneath would be the rest of the world and how that carried on as per usual. But to tie those little elements within each scene in are the detritus, are the tools, are the backstory of the historical side. So it's important. So that
all the levels would be as frenetic as each other's, wouldn't they? You know, even the map room would be covered in maps. You know, there would be aeroplans and aircraft parts all over the place in the lower hangars. And I guess you can show that. You can show that all the way through the entire carrier, can't you? Or give that kind of frenetic. I like that word. I'll write that down. So, I mean, you touched on it. So, weathering wise, then, James, have you thought about how to weather? I mean, I know you can do it with like the battle scars, but have you thought about how you're going to paint the weathering in so that it looks that reflects your health journey? Have you ever consider that?
Yes, I have, but not massively, if I'm honest, because in effect there will be 4 different areas and 4 different weathering techniques required for it. One will be the one side out of the 4, which will be the main hull of the ship, which is going to be obviously battered with seawater and rust and all that sort of stuff, and doesn't reflect on my journey or anything else. It's all about the historical part of it and setting the scene. And then obviously the island itself will be similar to a point, but slightly different, because there's elements within that storytelling that I need to try and bring in different elements of weathering maybe. The bottom scene is going to be, again, more of a reflective historical approach, I guess, because it's everything's just carrying on as normal. The hardest one's going to be the middle one. It's going to be where the main reflections of the explosion, etc. are. I think, I mean, we talked about this previously in other things, but to have the courage to basically, I've got to weather the whole lot, and then I've got to have the courage with that middle section to go, I've done it. Now I've got to change it by putting bright oranges and yellows over everything, and be brave and just crack on and see how it goes. And I think when I do that, I think that will be the moment in which I can then reflect on the difference of weathering. Is there a difference in weathering that I need to approach to bring out my story, my journey? But until then, I'm going to try not to think about it too much, because it's going to scare the Jesus out of me.
Yes. Well, all of these have scared you. All these roundtables have scared you. Bill, so we're talking about that. How would you approach weathering to tell a story other than the historical side? How would you be able to use weathering to tell a human story? Yeah, I guess.
I think that. Oh, I'm sorry. I think it is just like James was saying. The middle has to be high contrast so far as painting and weathering and stuff like that. Sharp edges, you're not really blending colors as much. There will have to be some just to keep it realistic, but I would concentrate on harshness. I would sharp angles. Heck, make sure there's a painting tide line in there, because that's going to differentiate one color from the next, and is that hard, harsh reality that snaps from one color to the next, that is going to help, I believe, show that instantaneous explosion, reaction, the immediacy of what's happening in that area. In the other areas, maybe there's not as much of that. When I'm moving from one color to the next, maybe it's more of a flow. It's a fade into a darker color to a lighter color, instead of that harsh cutoff of color. I think that will have an impact if you keep that in mind. And when I'm painting or whatever, I like to set those kind of things in my mind, not as such a deliberate thing, but as a feel of how I'm painting. I am painting a harsh reality. Things are immediate. Things are different from another. It is this very hard demarcation from one thing to the next. So that's what I'm thinking as I'm working in the middle of it. When I'm thinking about the tower, the family element and stuff like that, it's more of a softness. There's an inviting feel to that. That's kind of a place you want to be. You don't want to be in that deck down below. You want to be up in that tower, because things are calmer there. Things are ordered. But in the midst of all that's happening in the middle of it, there's all this chaos. And then down below, same kind of thing. It's kind of more muted. The world goes on. That's the bottom, and so that is more, again, of that blending of colors, that blending of things, where it's not this harsh jump out at you. That's kind of how I would approach it, and hope that those feelings, as I'm doing those parts of it, come through with intention.
Okay. What about you, Martin? Have you worked on anything before that you'd have to do? Any of your previous work that you've done? Have you had to put weathering in that tells a story beyond the historical?
Yeah, so I sent actually a couple of pictures through to James, and I think a couple of them are from a diorama I just finished, which is, it's a Russian tank in Berlin, and I was quite selective over the rubble and debris to make sure that told a story. You can see, for example, there's rolled up carpet. There's bits of wood that come from window frames. There's brickwork. There's posters. I think it's worth remembering that you want to have, and you see there's a clock in the background. So again, it's telling a story. There's a discarded helmet. There's a newspaper with Adolf Hitler on it. I think in the situation with this ship, you're talking about environmental weathering, and you're talking about weathering from the incident itself. And I think also because you've got an external element with the island and the top deck, as opposed to an internal element, that weathering is going to have to be subtly different, because the top deck is subject to the environment. There may be rain streaks, the water's going to have been running down stuff. As you said when we were chatting beforehand, there were some huge storms leading up to this. And again, more rust on the outside than obviously on the inside. And on the inside, you're going to have dust settling in corners, around ledges, around bolts, and using pigments and stuff. One thing that I like to use, and I don't know how relevant it's going to be to your situation, I was trying to think if you'd have much that involved glass. But one thing I've done in the past is with microscopes, they do those tiny little glass slides.
Yeah.
And they are super, super thin. You can break them with your fingers. And by putting, I just use white glue and I stick little bits of glass in at different angles. And the other picture that I sent, which is of it's an aircraft, it's a Harrier. You can see by putting bits of glass at different angles, you're always going to be able to catch the light somewhere.
That's really nice. Yeah.
So whatever happens, you're going to get some glinting off some glass. And I found it a really useful vehicle for helping tell a story and to show a bit of instant impact on what's happening. I think Bill's right in that starkness is going to tell a story, because you've got, previous to the explosion, you'll have had something that was not serene, but a controlled environment. They're working on aircraft, and then this massive explosion. It's important, I think, not to have that blend, but to have it clear that is a violent thing that has just happened, very different to what was going on before, and to have that disparity shown and be quite clear.
Yeah, it is super important on that deck to do that, and we touched upon it before in a previous roundtable where I said that what I was going to have to make sure was that I've got a figure that I have in mind that will show all the force, and it'll be right at the edge, and it should be pretty obvious. But there'll be elements throughout the rest of that deck which will show the force, because it would have rebounded off bulkheads. It wouldn't have just been a small one wave. It would have been multiple waves from multiple directions. And quite honestly, I would think an explosion in such a confined space would throw tools in totally different directions, when you would think it would all be going in one direction because of the force of the blast. But once it's hit that wall and bounced back off, you've got tools flying in all directions, literally. So the tools and the detritus that there would have been, because they were in the midst of changing from bombs to torpedoes and torpedoes back to bombs and all that sort of thing, as well as maintaining aircraft. And as I've explained previously, I've got two aircraft in these scenes. One will be in the lower deck, one will be in the explosion deck, if you like. But to help tell my story, my operation, etc., that will be a zero with its engine all open, and they're trying to fix it, and they've basically decided that it's not a quick fix. We're going to have to push it out of the way and get rid of it because it's in the way. But that would then mean there'd be lots of stuff around that they were potentially going to try and fix. So that again gives more debris, more things in which can be moving, or people are falling over, trying to hold on to, or whatever. So
you're going to have to buy another zero to cut all the parts off, so you can have another zero in bits.
No, I don't need to. I got that one all sussed. But yeah, so that and the lower, the very lower deck, the best way I can describe how I see I've got to achieve with that is I've basically got to buy a whole new paint range of slightly out of focus paint, and paint everything so it's out of focus, apart from the elements that I want to tell the story that sort of pop a little bit, so that will hopefully will drag your eye in and make you understand that everything else is sort of fuzzy. It's not quite as detailed apart from that little bit.
You can get me to paint those bits and they'll be
nice. So you know, as long as the figures haven't got cross eyes and all that sort of stuff, it's fine.
2-inch brush.
I don't need to go into massive detail in so I will on the top deck. The top deck, I'm going to have to go into all that sort of bizarre detail. The middle deck, I can get away with it a little bit because there will be lots of shadows as well. So again, I may be able to hide some figures in a shadow, which means I don't have to focus on the facial features quite so much and all that sort of stuff. So there's lots of fun to be had when I do that.
Yeah, all those things that you're talking about being out of focus, you can do with light, can't you? And shadow, certainly. Yeah. Joe says so many rabbit holes. Yeah, you have. Yeah, no idea.
No, he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. you know, I'll give you an example. So I'm using RP's rivet puncher to make rivets, and I have got 4 bags up there of different size rivets because I started at the rivet that I thought would be right, and I've had to downsize to get to where I need to be right now. But I've also realised that there are other parts of the same process I'm doing that actually need a smaller rivet, not a bigger rivet. So, yeah, rabbit holes like you wouldn't believe, Joe. Trust me.
Yeah. Haven't you blunted your rivet puncher as well? You were saying
Blunted too. I didn't tell John that, but yeah. So if anyone watches this and knows how to get the bit you put in your rivet puncher sharp again, let me know. I think I've got an idea of how to do it, but yeah.
You have no idea. I wonder how many people have ever had to blunt their, or done a project where they blunt their rivet tool. That's shocking. So I said at the start we were going to split this into 2. So I think that was the weathering side. We're going to talk about the battle scar side of things if you want to now.
Mm-hmm.
So I know on that picture of the Harrier, so the blown out glass in there is a battle scar, isn't it? You know, am I right in thinking there's bullet holes? Yes, there we go.
Yeah. So in the movie, he does get sprayed by a helicopter with a Dushka machine gun in it. On both sides, and in all the photographs of the main part of the battle, you can see they're quite clear and they're quite large holes because it's the equivalent of a 50mm. But I think when it comes to battle damage, there are things that you have to bear in mind, and it's very tempting and very easy to go overboard. It has to be believable. No big Hollywood effects. It has to be something that seems to convey realism, and that you can look into by looking at reference pictures for damaged ships, stuff that's bomb damage, and so on. Excuse me. And there's a lot of variance. You know, I mostly do armor, and when I look at pictures of wrecked tanks, they can go from stuff that's just got, neatly punched holes, to stuff that isn't even recognizable as a vehicle anymore. There's so many bits, it's just completely blown apart. So somewhere in between. And because of your situation, James, it's you're portraying the instant that this happens. So there's going to be effect from this explosion, but there may not be massive damage yet.
No.
And it's, a millisecond later, that zero that's being worked on might be obliterated. But for your actual moment, is to decide how much damage has happened at that point, that moment in time.
Yeah, I'm fortunate in that respect because I've chosen that moment, or to try and make sure it's that moment. It reduces the amount of damage that I need to portray. And the Akagi was not damaged at all. It was fine. There was nothing wrong with it until that bomb went through the flight deck. It had several munitions dropped by it and missed, but no damage per se. And there was no damage after that either. It was just that one bomb managed to create the storm that then came. Obviously, after that moment, multiple explosions, multiple things catching fire. And ammunition would have fired and gone off, bombs would have gone off, etc. So and the fact that this vessel managed to stay afloat until the evening, bearing in mind it was early morning that it got hit, but it stayed afloat until almost the next day, and then after it had been abandoned and realised that they weren't going to save it. Then the Japanese Navy sunk it with 4 torpedoes. It needed 4 torpedoes to sink it.
Shit.
So, yes, at that point, it was very damaged and a lot of fires, etc. But the moment I'm depicting isn't. So realistically, there is only really, and I'm going to say this on purpose because I'm hoping one of you is going to come up with a bright idea how I do this because I haven't figured it out yet. But there's two elements to the explosion other than light that I want to put in. One is on the top deck, which is the theatrical side coming out. where I had decided that I wanted to. I can't remember if I had a picture of what I was trying to make. I think I did, but I've deleted it now. Never mind. So what I wanted to make was so just past the island, coming towards the rear of the ship, is the lift, where the lift mechanism, and the bomb went through the flight deck just past the lift mechanism. So it's the 15 meters away from where I'm talking about, or I'm going to be depicting. But they had the flag system there just past the island. So you would have had the Admiral's banner, you would have had the Japanese standard and all the signaling flags, etc. But what I want to try and depict is one of the flags, maybe preferably the rising sun, the Japanese flag, where a splinter of something has gone through the flag that was ablaze, and it's just starting to smolder and make the flag on fire. Purely so I can tie that into the story that I'm depicting, but also the title of the piece. So that's my artistic license. The other thing would be in that middle deck is that I've mentioned it several times. There would be a concussion wave, a massive force of energy being pounded around this confined space. So I'm going to have to try and show buckling of some description in bulkheads. That's going to be quite difficult, and it's probably the only way I can do it is slightly to deform them to give the impression, because it, again, luckily, because it's that moment, it doesn't have to be how it would be at the end. It's just at that moment. So maybe the bulkhead breathing inwards or taking the pressure inwards, so pushing it into the main body of the ship a little bit. So at that the far side of the left hand side of the piece, where the main pressure would be from the explosion, that bulkhead's going to be very visible, that there's a frame behind that piece of metal because it's being pushed in past the frame. That's really the only things I can think of, apart from the flying debris to show that concussion wave. But that's the only thing I can think of that might work.
It's hard to show a wave because you visualize it and you visually see the differences in light. But I think one way you might be able to have a play with it is to take some plastic card and have at it with a hairdryer. Just get it soft enough that you can deform it and maybe create a wave just by that pressure. It may ripple that
That's
way.
a good idea.
Yeah, you could. Yeah,
and also you have to remember different materials are going to show in different ways. So you're going to have rippling with metal. Wood is going to splinter. So, and then glass or whatever. But different materials are going to react in a different way to that violent explosion.
What about you, Bill? You got any ideas about the battle?
With it coming from one area and moving through there, I think we've all seen in movies and stuff where the blast is approaching you, and that shockwave precedes it. So behind the shockwave, you see red, you see white, you see bright brilliance, explosion, whatever. And then in that, just ahead of it, there's stuff just becoming airborne. And in front of that, it's relatively quiet. That's that demarcation for our shockwave. I wonder, excuse me, because all the time that we have been talking, I've imagined the center as almost everything coming out from that. And for me, that was difficult. Sure, stuff flying in the air, all that, easy to understand it, but hard to make. But if it's coming from a specific side, like you said, the left-hand side, and then moving through it, I think we've got a heck of a lot easier way to then, on the left-hand side, higher color, red, yellows, whites, the brightness of the impact, then you have a little stage of stuff flying off the ground, stuff being moved. And then you get to the point where folks are just recognizing it, but it's not really anything happening to them yet. But the fear is in their eyes, and they're starting to, oh my gosh, the surprise is there.
Mhm.
But that might be a way to do it, where and the color adds to it. You've got that brightness over here, and then that color fades as it moves through. And then again, things aren't disturbed over here. Things are highly disturbed over here. I don't know. That's kind of what comes to mind. I don't know if that would work for. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. Let me throw a couple of images up. So to try and explain to everybody else what I'm trying to put across. So this is an AI image which shows the difference of the waves and how intense they may be, etc. Now, obviously, it's not really telling the story as I'm trying to explain, but it gives you a rough idea. But one of the things I get from this is, like you were just saying, Bill, about the colors. So in the center of that blast, you've got really bright colors, whites, all that. And then on the periphery, on the right, on the edges, it's actually shadows,
right.
and it's almost like the light has been sucked out of that area into the middle of the explosion. So paler colors should, I hope, be able to emphasize that as well as shadows. And then obviously this one doesn't actually help at all explain anything really. But,
it's pretty.
I'd have forgotten that's what it was. But yeah, so that's not going to help. But that one certainly does. I mean, if we go to the original picture, the one I first sent you, I don't know if you remember this. It's been so long ago now. But this was the not that one. This was the original idea. So as your AI has explained it, that's where you've got that vision, that idea of the explosions in the middle and not off to the side. And what I wanted to avoid at all costs was, as you can see from that picture, you've effectively got to add cotton wool galore in there to bring in smoke, the explosion, and all that sort of stuff. And I don't want to do that. I really don't. So the way in which I hope I'll be able to pull it off is by, like I say, if you can imagine on the left-hand side, that's the closest part to the explosion. That's going to be like that, showing the full force. So that the reason of that one figure on his 1 foot tiptoes falling backwards because he's been pushed out the way. And then as you come across the piece, then obviously you've got items being pushed against people. So trolleys being pushed against people and knocking them off balance. And then as you work your way through the piece, you suddenly get to a piece that, like you said, at the far extreme, you've got someone going, "What's that?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe with a spanner whizzing past his ear roll. But it's going to be really difficult to isolate that 1 second moment that I'm trying to encapsulate and not do too much. If I do too much, it will break it. It will be more than that second. So it's.
But I think
very difficult, isn't it?
keeping it linear, though, like you just explained, starting on one side, going to the next, I think that helps dramatically, because previously I had in my mind this, this amorphous center, and everything was, coming out from it. Really difficult to do, frankly.
So
I think it's easier to start from one side to the next.
If I put it into a color match for you, so you can try and maybe this will help you visualize it better. So on the right hand side, nearest the explosion will be on top of the other colors will be red, crimson, dark reds, and bright red edges. Then you'll go into the yellows. Then you'll get into the white. So the white will be in the middle of the piece almost.
Oh, it will. Okay.
So because the reason being is that then I can, after the white, it's a faded color. I can fade the colors that are there and draw in shadows, etc., nearest the white. But then as you get furthest away, it's just dulled down a little bit. So hopefully by having that, you can imagine the back wall of lots of beam work, etc., with all the edges of the beam work with the highlighted colors and the shadows behind, etc., as it flows across. within the explosion, you'll find within that white section, everything will be white. There'll be very little shadows because it will just literally take over everything. And then as you go either direction, that's when your shadows start to come in. Obviously, the more to the right, the darker, the more muted the colors will be. More to the left, nearer the explosion, the more yellowy red colors there'll be. And what I wanted to make sure is right at the edge of that was mainly red, purely because it was a heart event, blood, etc. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't gore or anything, but for me, but yeah, obviously that creates the visual effect of horror, red. So by hitting that red, going to oranges, yellows, white, and the mute colors, or shadows and mute colors, hopefully that brings in that wave scenario. As long as the harder part, to be honest, is the stuff in front of it, is be able to make that line go across everything else.
I still think it's going to be very doable. I mean, I'm visualizing it. Very doable. The one guy, that's reacting on his 1 foot and stuff like that. I've seen this image before. I'm a big heavy metal magazine fan back from the 80s, where they're in the explosion and their clothing is being ripped off. Have you considered any of that to give a little bit more visceral reaction to the explosion? Maybe part of his sleeve, part of his shirt is coming off. It's quite easy to go down to flesh in a figure. I've done that a few times, and that might be a fun thing that shows stuff.
I hadn't, but that might be a good idea. I hadn't thought about putting stripper Mike in the forefront, but
no flag poles, no pole or anything.
Because he hasn't got a pole, it'll be fine.
Right.
I think Bill wants to do the research on it.
But yeah, no, I mean that you're right. I mean that's another. If you think of talk about rabbit holes that Joe mentioned, talking about the force of the wave, pressure wave, etc. That's going to affect all the clothing, etc., etc. So there's going to be, or have to be, modifications to a lot of the figures in that respect as well. Anyway, so it's just another level of complicatedness that I could really have not taken.
We could have really left out of this. Yeah, sure.
One thing we haven't
figures. You could, I mean, using 2-part putty to do clothing, it'd be difficult to get it that thin. But just like tissue paper, that kind of thing to show ripped clothes, because you're trying to get across the point of that it's an instantly violent thing that's happened, hugely violent. And whenever you see, even on TV, you see an explosion has gone off, or there's been a bomb, a terrorist bomb, whatever. People are in rags, just shredded.
Yeah.
Sorry, Malcolm, you wanted to say something.
No, I was just going to say the one thing we haven't really talked about yet is what you said about the blood side of things, the red side of things, and then the actual fact that it's a reflection on your operation. So I was wondering if you had any idea of how you were going to put the scars of your operation into the piece, and in terms of what you're going to do with the plastic. Are you going to have it all being put back together in that bottom deck somehow? Are you going to have it being fixed? Because I know we talked about having like a door at the back that was lit or open to the other elements from behind to show sort of hope, let's say. Is that something you considered, or are you just going to go with the kind of what's happening now? What's your idea about that?
So it's difficult to, in a way, it's difficult to be able to reflect on the year or plus journey that I'm at the moment in the recovery. And I think realistically the door at the back, the moment of hope, it seemed to be the right thing to go with. Using the lower level by effectively making a level that would be repeated above, if you like, if nothing had happened. it gives that reflection too, in the fact that, you know, after this event you can go back to normal and all that sort of thing. So no, I hadn't really given a lot of thought to it. I had thought about subtly in the back wall creating a world line that was much bigger than normal, but that went from top to bottom to signify the cut on my chest.
Yeah.
Um,
I guess same with when it was being rebuilt and remade and put back together and added onto. Could you incorporate into that as well? Something to do with that?
That's quite possibly, yeah. I haven't given that element consideration too much right now. But it's certainly something in which is worth looking at, because it's another layer on top of the layers of the onion. So
yeah, I think it might muddy it a bit, because it was an event that happened. Those things were happening before the heart attack and the bomb at the same time. You know,
using the figures within the piece to tell the story is probably the best I can do. And by having that doorway at the back as a there is an exit, there is future beyond the event, and the element underneath that should pretty much say that life goes on, don't worry about it. It should be the connection sufficiently enough to do that. But if you know, with the violence of the person that's at the forefront getting hit by the blast, that's the shock element. The engine being open and the mechanics looking on it, that's the surgery, etc. Maybe, I mean, we talked about this briefly, that maybe we could put in a medic at the back going through that door or something, but we're picking a moment in time where the medic wouldn't be ready yet to be doing anything. However, he may have been in the hangar helping, and he might be reaching to pick a medical bag up off the side, or something. So yeah, there is a chance potentially to create a moment where it would make you think of what next, what happens next. This is the explosion. What will happen next? Who's ready for what's next? And I think that should be an element within that level. Is there should be someone in the figures wise. There should be someone going, right, okay, I know what we're going to do next, because that's part of the experience.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Someone outside of the hole or something like that, through the door, maybe.
Would that be more on the upper deck, where they might have had slightly more warning and slightly more time than the guys in the hangar? Because I think previously you talked about people running towards or running from the island, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I initially was going to have a figure in the doorway on the island at the bottom, right on the flight deck, and a figure on the flight deck that was sort of hovering because the blast had thrown him up off. He ducked because he saw the bomb coming, but the blast threw him off the deck. And I've sort of gone away from that idea a little bit. But certainly on the island, as you look at the island, there are different levels of the island where sailors would have been using binoculars, spotting for gunners, firing guns themselves, all that sort of stuff. So they're preoccupied. They're not going to know an awful lot of what's gone on until that bang happens. But there still will be an element. There's got to be an element of someone who, because there's bound to have been somebody that stood there and went, oh, that's going to hit. Damn.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Oops. Band-Aid.
Bill?
I things pop into my head when we're talking, and one of them is, James, remember the picture of you in the hallway right after surgery?
Pops at your head. God, poor Bill.
Three of you picture
standing. I think you were holding maybe on one of the rollers, and you had some bags or something like there, but it was just standing in the hallway. What about that figure in the middle of everything with just light coming down on you? Calm, unaffected by anything. It's a little bit more Outer Limits, Twilight Zone kind of a sci-fi thing. But I think with everything in the diorama going on, and if somebody doesn't know your personal story, if you, this big, are standing there in your surgery smock and all of that from that picture, are right in the middle, literally with a spotlight coming right down on you, still, I mean, for me, I think the visual punch of that would be, what the heck is that? Man, talk about interest. Talk about, I gotta figure it out. And I don't know. I get these wacky ideas, and I blame Martin, because Martin introduced me to making these wonderful elements of your diorama that are, they fit, but there's just a lot more behind that little story, you know. And it started with your parrots on the P-38, you know. And I talked to you about this many years ago.
Yeah.
It is just sometimes to take the image and wipe it real quick with a singular thing to change your thinking. I don't know. It's a crazy idea. You may not like it at all, but I think that there's a bit of poignancy in that, you standing calm in the center of all of this
Chaos.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's very off subject.
I'll certainly start conversation. People would be stood around there going,
yeah, what? And then it becomes then the story. Then they start reading. They start looking at your placards. They start figuring it out. They start seeing everything that you're trying to, and then they go, oh, look, that is, you know, I don't know, James, if that's has any interest to you whatsoever, but I do like to put things in my dioramas that really go, what? What? You know? And thank you, Martin. That's from you, sir.
Yeah.
It makes it so much interesting. You know?
I think, first of all, I just want to clarify the fact that the image in which you're depicting wasn't after my surgery. It was before my surgery.
Was that before?
It was before. And it was a made-up picture for a caption competition for our Malcolm Minds podcast. However, I won't go any more descriptive than that, because I don't. It's close to, in England, it's close to tea time. It'll put people up after tea. But I can assure everybody that every 3D modelling company that I have approached have told me not to ever send that image to them again. So it's been made into a figure. You're right. You are right in the concept in which you're saying, and it really would make people stop and go, "What the?" But it would be too far out of context.
And it's just an idea. But
however, bear in mind, we've already just spoken about the force of the blast, the fact it would rip clothes, etc. So there may be a chance of an element that I could potentially make something that isn't that moment, that scene, but if you look at it carefully and you're aware of the picture, you would go, oh shit, he got it in there, how did he do that? That would be quite interesting.
I think
that is an Easter egg.
And just the calmness, the solemnity, the unaffected, to me, it's you know, all these things spinning around you happening, but it's just right down the middle. You know, you just have to walk that path right down the middle with all that's going on around you. And you've done that. So I don't know. I liked the image in my mind when it just popped in.
It could be removable, depending on where you're showing the diorama.
Yeah.
Whether it's relevant to your audience, you could just pop little James in the front.
Yeah, little James. Or what do you mean, little James? Do you mean his?
I'm sure I'd get arrested for putting my little James in there.
Yeah.
Not going to be that detailed. It's only 1/35th, Martin.
I don't remember making that image public at all, but anyway.
Okay. Right. That's the next round.
What's our Benny Hill moment?
Okay. Where do we go from here? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, attention on deck. Okay, that's that. There we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we talked a lot about all the weathering. What about the technical skills? And Martin, I'm going to ask you because I guess I don't know if you're the newest of the modelers here. Maybe.
By
Maybe,
quite
yeah.
a bit, I think.
Yeah. I think that what technical skills have you learned then that you brought that improved your weathering that James possibly could experience or use, or what technical stuff does he need to do? That's what I'm going to ask.
Okay, you're good now. You got it.
Yes, I think that's what I'm asking. Yeah.
All right. So technically, we talked before about damage and the fact that it's an instant explosive event. So we're not looking at long-lasting damage or signs of, I'm trying to say this, stuff that's happened minutes ago. It's just that moment. So that, I think, is the difficulty. And I think rippling of metal is one good thing. Wood is really good to use because not just the fact it's splintering, but in terms of color, the color on the inside of the wood is going to be different to the color on the outside.
Yeah.
So that will portray the fact that that's just happening. That's literally just happening now. I would say making sure that the damage is consistent, that it's believable. Making sure you don't have unrealistic burn and explosion effects. Doing research, I think, is pretty key for this element of it. Stuff that I've used in the past, the environment I've done it in has been different, and most of the damage that I've done has been stuff that has happened. Things have moved on, so it's not capturing that moment. That moment has passed. That moment has gone.
Right.
And I think when we were talking about figures before, I think figures are something people can relate to. Like we talked about the two audiences, your more technical, aware modeler, and your spectator, your passerby. And seeing damage happen to a person is something they can relate to, and you don't want to make it gory. I mean,
no,
you're having clothes ripped. I think that would be fantastic to do. Obviously, in a real life situation, 3 milliseconds later, that person would be a red blob. But we're not going there. You've just got to capture that moment. And I think I've used a situation in the past where I have made torn clothes, and I was suggesting is using tissue paper because it's kind of the right scale. I tried to do it with 2-part epoxy, and I just couldn't get it thin enough. And that's on 1/35th scale. You're using 1/48th.
No, it's 1/35th.
Yeah, it's 35th.
Sorry, it's 1/35th. So with 1/35th, it has to be in scale, and I think that's probably the only way that you could do that. Hats coming off, because I know the Japanese do wear those little caps on ship. Most of the crew would have those on. It's having those blow off. That's another thing that we'd do. I know you mentioned cotton wool and wanting to avoid it. I think that's wise. But also when you think about the situation, that instant explosion, there wouldn't be any smoke yet.
No.
It's all blast right now.
Yeah. And that's why I chose that moment, is because it takes away all the pressure to create that cotton wool or smoke or anything. It takes all that away. It makes it a whole lot different and a whole lot harder, but it takes away the need for that. The difficulty will be in improving that blast wave and splintering wood. I mean, that might seem to some people difficult within that environment, but it's not actually. There'd be a lot of wood around. Things would, bombs would have been in wooden crates, for example. They wouldn't necessarily be there on the deck, but given the chaos that they were in, and they wouldn't have had enough trolleys for stuff.
Yeah.
You know, to move stuff around or something. So, yeah, maybe there was boxes being moved with bombs in them. Sounds a bit dodgy, but there may have been. Or they certainly may have brought the bombs out in the boxes to make room for something else, and then lift the bomb out and put it on a trolley and take it to the plane or something. Don't know. It might be worth having a little read into that, a bit of research.
But certainly be a mess.
Yeah, but certainly if you, I don't know if you ever have seen the piece, but there was a piece by Robert Blocker who did a biplane that was crashing into a wooden fence.
Yeah, I have seen that.
And
I think I've seen that.
Really clever with what he did. He did it so the splinters of wood were all connected slightly to each other, but it grew in a motion.
Yeah.
That's something that's achievable in that environment. Definitely. And almost in my mind, I've got this vision. If you can imagine the shockwave of the atom bombs, etc., where there's that blast and the a box imploding effectively and just spraying out, might be able to effectively do that, where you've got a box that's imploding back into itself and going outwards. Yeah. So that would show speed, force, and all sorts. So that's very possible. And also, again, you were talking about the color differences. Yes, you're right. The outside of the book would be quite grubby and the inside not, etc. But also, if it's by the red section, if you like, of that blast, you've got the reds and all that on there, and then the highlighting of the wood color would pop in the shadows really quite a lot. Subtly, but it would pop quite a lot. So there's lots of experimenting there to be done, and I do like the idea of clothes ripping and stuff. And my thought wasn't toilet paper, but it was very thin sweet wrapper foil, because that will give you a lot more chance to get that ripple effect. Because the problem with toilet paper is if you've made a canopy or something with toilet paper, it's great, really great stuff, but as soon as you start putting some moisture on that, it's very temperamental.
And there's also you talked about the flag and having the shrapnel. I mean, again, going through clothes and having small holes that are black around the outline because something hot's just gone straight through it. There's huge potential there, I think. And like I said, it's something that your average person can relate to. They can, if you had an explosive scene with no figures in it, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's cool. But to put people in it connects them to it, connects them to the scene, and they can, it creates emotions, which is what you're trying to do with your diorama.
Yeah,
it's a human journey, isn't it? It's a human story. What about you, Bill? What sort of technical skill do you think we need to employ, or what type of resources, what sort of things?
The further I get into this, I think that it's more and more and more about painting. When I look at some of the best dioramas out there, old and new, it's really people that have this ability to paint as if they were painting, a masterpiece. And I think of it more and more about that these days. We can build. I mean, building a kit, come on, it's pretty easy. Everything's laid out for you. So we can enhance our skills with that pretty quickly. But it's the painting the figures and the painting of everything around it to create that visual, because we're still creating a visual no matter what. And so color and painting, if there's one skill that I wish I could 10 up on, it's painting. It's not scratch building. It's not anything else. It's painting. So I think that's, for me, technically, the most challenging part to anything is getting those colors right, getting the detail of the paint as minute as you can, but concentrate on the painting, because the painting is really gonna be the thing that brings it all to life. So everything that else that you're doing, well, leads up to that, but it is that final paint. So for your question, the final technical thing is got to be painting and composition.
So there you go. So learn how to do that, James.
Yeah, hopefully at some point I will.
Between now and then, sure.
Yeah. I'll squeeze 40 years of experience in to a year. James, I'm going to have to run, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
My time is up and I need to get back to being daddy.
No problem.
Cool. Are you okay to take it home, as it were?
Yeah, I think we're all but done anyway. So, but yeah, thank you, Malcolm. Enjoy time with little one.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Martin.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Take
very
care.
much.
See you,
It's been
James.
great
See
to
you
see
soon.
you all.
See ya.
So that just leaves us three. I think we've covered pretty much everything I wanted to within this. Some great ideas from you two, as you always. I just popped in the questions there if there was anyone watching, which I don't think there is at the moment, that's going to ask a question. So I think we're okay. Is there anything maybe you guys want to pose to me as a question?
Are you going to rely? Because we were talking about lighting before, and I did miss one of the episodes that was about lighting. But are you looking more at OSL, at object source lighting, than actual lighting?
Yeah. So just to recap on that. So yeah, basically, certainly in that middle section. So the potential lighting effects I've got, or the ability to put them in, is I'm going to have, or you would have had, so if you can imagine an industrial lampshade hanging from the ceiling multiple times. Yeah. Obviously, the force of the blast is going to make those point in the wrong direction. And what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to have 40 odd LEDs in each layer and figure all that out. So, and as part of the experiment of not doing the cotton wool, etc., was to just go fully embraced the OSL line. There will be some LEDs in there at some point, probably in that back wall, so that between the bulkhead and the bulkhead of the aircraft carrier are some rooms, and there may be some lighting in there. Yeah. In the lower deck, there may be more subtle lighting, or maybe a strip of LED of some sort on a warm, subtle color, maybe. But I'm going to try and avoid it as best I can. And any LEDs that I do use, I want them to bring out a certain thing. So, for example, on the bridge, there's some lighting in there to highlight, because it's in quite a lot of shadow. Yeah. But one of the elements I want to bring into it is that there's a map table at the back of it, and I'm going to make a lamp that goes over the map table to highlight the map. Because it would have been there, but it gives me a chance just to get a little bit of depth in there. I think the LEDs that come with the kit are very, very stark, so I'm probably going to have to tone them down in some form. But then I'm going to have to replace some of the light in another way, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, in short, yes, I'm going to try and avoid LEDs and lighting as much as possible, and rely on the paint. Certainly in that middle section, it's all about OSL. Yeah, cool.
Very nice.
Just to make it a bit more difficult.
Yeah.
If it's not a challenge, it's not worth it.
You know, the more I am nervous about it, don't get me wrong, because I'm okay. Don't get me wrong, I don't think I'm the best painter in the world, but I'm okay. And I am very much aware that what I'm trying to challenge myself with may well be beyond my scope. But the aim is, if it is beyond my scope, I'm going to damn well try my best to learn what it is and how it works.
Is there any way you find?
I think if I can master it to a degree, I think there's enough within the build to me to get away with some stuff. So it doesn't have to be a Monet painting to get away with it. So I should be okay. But I'm very much aware there's going to be certainly going to be an occasion where I'm going to be sending pictures of it to people going, well, I'm missing something. I know I am. I'm not sure what to do. What should I do? And being advised otherwise. All right. So that's going to be quite difficult. But it's going to be fun. And I think the other thing as well, I think I should be able to cast light in that middle section with the OSL relatively easily. The like I just said, alluded to earlier, the back wall, I'm really not worried about the back wall at all, because I'm pretty certain I know roughly how that's going to work. What worries me is everything in the foreground, trying to create that same color swatch over everything else is nerving, to say the least. Because just for example, the zero is going to have, because it's really going to have to be battered in many different ways with different colors all over it, and shadows and all, and just the thought of that is scary. Because I remember as well, I mean, it's got 3 sides that are open to this thing. So I can't even get away, like, I wish I'd said this when Malcolm was here, but, like Malcolm doesn't like painting the underneath of a tank. What's the point? No one sees it. The back side of that zero, I've still got to take into account the colours. I can't not do it. So, I can't and go, right, okay, I'm going to do these edges because that's what everyone's going to see, and leave the back alone, because in theory, you might be able to see it from the sides. Might. I don't know how much, but you might. So then I've got to take into account shadows on the floor and all that sort of stuff. And that, I'm not that worried about it, because I've got an idea of how I'm going to achieve it. It's going to be very much a UV light and dark room and a picture camera and taking pictures and trying to modify that in a way in which brings in other colors. And I may try, I'd take a picture of that and pop it in an AI and go, this is what I'm trying to achieve. What do you think? And it may give me an idea, or it might just send me down a complete rabbit hole for no reason. But I think with the UV light, it should be sufficient to understand at least where the shadows are. And then it's a case of folding those shadows in and fading them into the bits. And luckily, because like Bill said, that there's going to be at some point, there's going to be a stark difference between that white and yellow light and the shadows. There's going to be a defined line. So that makes it a little easier in some respects. I don't have to blend that in. I can just go, poof, there you go. Not quite.
I just had a thought that you could maybe do like a dry run, like a dry fit, have the plane in there, have a few figures, and then actually get a super bright light source and shine it in there. Even maybe draw an outline in pencil where the shadows are. Just or take a photo of that, just so you know what it's going to be like.
All you have to do is turn off the lights, use your phone, and turn on the flash. And I've done that before, Martin. It works great, because with the lights out, you turn on the flash, you'll get the picture. You won't want to show it to anybody, but it shows you all those shadows just amazingly, and everything's bright. So that's one way to do it.
So one of the things in which I have done already is I have got a 0 up there in 148, and I think that's where you may have thought we would do 148. So I've done a 0 on 148, and I've got some figures in 148. And the idea is that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a dry run, see how it goes, because I'm not worried about that. And I've got another kit up there that I can make again if I want to. Because that's the big part of it, is that once I've done the 0 and I've got all the decals on, it's all done how it needs to be done, I've then got to be confident enough to go, right, okay, so I'm now going to, I don't know, let's say I spray white, like your Zenith, your figure. Do that to my plane and just go, and then go over what's there, because that will give me a really good understanding of where that light is. And that might be the way to do it. But I'm going to try, that's the technique I'm going to try with the 148th I've got up there. It's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it in a box that's open to 3 sides, and where the side on the left where that blast is going to come from, I'm literally just going to get, I was thinking more of going for an orange, like a bright orange or bright yellow maybe, and literally just give it a quick blast, leave it, walk away from it, go back to it and go, right, okay, let's have a look, take some pictures beforehand with the UV light. May even bring in a light that I can put filters in different colors, because that would be quite interesting. I think that would definitely work differently, because when you've got a light like a yellow, that's going to be quite different to a
and it bleaches everything else out, and it has great effect.
so I think that's probably the route I'm going to have to go down. I'm going to have to do that with a 1/48. I'm going to have to take those pictures and try and learn from them, probably print them out, blow them up and print them out so I got something to work through, a reference. And then again, when I've done the actual ones I'm going to use on this build, I'm going to have to do exactly the same thing process again. I'm going to have to do more pictures, more looking with light sources and all that sort of thing, and try and map out roughly where it's all going to go, and then move forward. Because obviously, once I get to that point, the internal structure of that deck will be done. It should all be painted. The zero should all be painted. Then I can take it out, and then I've got to start the hard part, which is the back wall, which is I've got to get in and fiddle around with. Yeah. And I think that's where the easy mistakes will be made. Where I have the concept, I have the idea, I've got the reference, and then I take it out of that environment and I try and paint it.
The execution.
So I've got a plane here that's never at this angle, but I'm going to put yellow on there because I know the yellow's got to go there, la, la, la. And then when I put it back down, whether that works, that's going to be the tricky bit. And that's where I think, while I've alluded to there being no blending, I know there's going to be blending, but I think that's where the blending bit will be, is I think I'm going to have to attack it like you would like a figure, effectively, where if you want to create a light source figure, you're going to paint it very subtly with its base colors, and then you're going to pick out the highlights and the lowlights, and then blend between, basically. And I think that's sort of where I'm going to have to go with it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Man with the plan.
You know, I think that what you're doing, James, is just really, there's so many things out there that are hanging, so many things out there that are scary. I love it. I just, these are the kind of projects that keep you, okay, I don't want to go on here, but I used to tell my guys, you want to be a bunny in the field. You don't want to be a bunny under a bush. Under the bush, you're safe. You know it. You're just nibbling on stuff. But when you're a bunny in the field, you're aware. You're looking around. You have to have all of your facilities. You're making sure hawks aren't coming at you, snakes aren't coming at you, all this kind of stuff. So the bunny in the field is awake and alive and looking around and alert and able to, I think, accomplish more things than the comfortable bunny under the bush.
Yeah.
So being the bunny in the field is the place you want to be. It's doing stuff that it's out of your comfort zone, you know, and that is what's so exciting about this. And I just love that, James. I just, kudos to you, sir. It's just a wonderful, wonderful project.
Yeah, it's an interesting place to be. We were talking today on Models for Heroes stream about, before that we were talking about how you keep your zest for the hobby alive, and how many people come into the hobby and all guns blazing, and within a couple of months it's all too much because they've hit that wall that they're not quite sure what to do, etc. And we often talk about reinvigorating your mojo and all that sort of stuff. One of the joys of this particular project is there are so many elements that if I get tired of doing the riveting, I can put that down and do something else.
Yeah.
If I get tired of painting a figure, I can put that down and do something else. And from a production point of view, it's difficult because you're doing lots of different things. So to try and do the build video that will come along with this series is a bit of a nightmare, I've got to be honest, because I've got to concentrate on something enough to be able to make a video of it. So yeah, at the moment I'm concentrating, and I've got stuff coming, but I'm concentrating mainly on the island, and I'm doing a bit of scratch building within the island because it gives me an opportunity to add a little bit of extra, but also it gives me an opportunity to test things that I know are going to be lower down, because that lower deck, I've got to recreate an island for those two decks again, completely from scratch. So yeah, that's quite difficult, and there's potentially a lot of detailing which I can add to that if I want to. And I really think there's going to be a point where I get to a certain stage and go, I think that's okay, I'm not too bad. And then I'm going to let a couple of people look at it and then go, no, I hate that, I've got to change that completely because that's not right. So it's going to be it's going to morph a few times, I'm fairly certain.
Yeah.
But that in itself, mean, if you think about it, it's a lot of investment money wise for this build. It's much more than I'd anticipated. I can't tell you that. You know, just a riveting machine, for example. Although I haven't bought it, I've borrowed it from someone. I am going to have to buy one because I'm blunting the ends of things. But you know, that's £100 in itself. That's just a piece of equipment. That's just one thing on top of 20, 30 things. That's without the kit. The kit's quite a lump of money. The plastic, you can't believe how much plastic I'm going to go through. I bought quite a bit and thinking, oh yeah, it'll be all right. But I've already replenished the beams that I bought twice. Not because I've done it and thrown them away, but because I haven't got enough. And they're not cheap. So, you know, so in that respect, it's going to give it's a lot of investment, but it's also it's going to give me a lot of pleasure over a long period of time. So, and there will be a build here and there that I have to do just to not be doing the Akagi.
Yeah.
But I'm not at that stage yet, so that's okay, because I've got 2 planes I can build, I've got figures I can fiddle, and I've got a lot of fiddling around to do with figures. But certainly with the figures, we talk about the figures for a second. The figures, I did a very quick calculation and come up with a crazy figure of anything between 120 to 60 figures for this build. I'm not going to be able to paint all those. I really am not. So maybe there's the opportunity for me to do the manipulation that I need to do, number them, and then send them out to some of the guys that want to paint them. And then they've been involved from this story right from the beginning when I had my heart attack. So why wouldn't that be nice, just to get someone to paint a figure and put it in the build? Becomes a community thing as well then. So I haven't told you that yet, but you've got figures coming to you guys.
Well, as good as that, I'd love to help.
Yeah. But it'd just be something exciting to do, wouldn't it? You know, and with these roundtables, I mean, these roundtables have been amazing, really been amazing. The amount of, I mean, I spoke to Bill for an hour before this all kicked off, and I went away with more questions than I had. I thought I got it pretty sussed in my head, but he posed so many questions. What I mean by that is not what you're going to do about this, James. I mean, how about this? Had you thought about this? And me going away and going, oh yeah, no, like ripped clothes, for example. I hadn't considered doing ripped clothes. Certainly hadn't thought of producing a picture of me with my ass hanging out,
a little James,
into a World War II diorama. But yeah. So and that in itself is quite fun. And Joe, that's been in the chat, he often weekly sends me a message. How are you getting on? I've been thinking about this. What about that? What about this? That's quite amazing. So, and what we will do, I think, what I was thinking about this yesterday, I think what we will do at some point in the new year is I'm going to do a build night once a month, and I'm going to ask people to come and sit. We can talk about the project or whatever, and then we can all sit and do a bit of model making, and chat about the different things that we discover along the way. So I think that'd be pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So anyway, guys, I've taken up loads of your time. Thank you so much for being with me again. You aren't for the next roundtable, you'll be glad to know, because it's all about the health side of stuff. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks' time for those that you're watching. Stay tuned for that. However, one thing I will say to you as well is that we will be doing a series of health. I'm going to say men's health, but it's not actually, it's anyone's health. But we're going to tackle some of the things that men can't talk about properly in relation to health, and I've got some experts that are going to help you with that, especially around the heart side of things. So if you have any questions or concerns that maybe you'd like me to look into and discuss within those, let me know and be part of it. But for now, thank you again for watching. Thank you guys for being with me through this project, and I bid you all a good farewell until next time.
You too.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful